I was standing at the altar in my wedding dress when the church doors opened. At first, everyone thought it was just a late guest. The music had already stopped. The pastor was smiling. My parents were crying in the front row. I was holding my bouquet so tightly that my fingers hurt because I was nervous, happy, and ready to begin the life I thought I had been dreaming of for years. Then I saw my fiancé, Ryan, standing at the back of the church, holding the hand of my best friend, Madison. For a second, my mind refused to understand what my eyes were seeing. Madison was my maid of honor. She was supposed to be standing beside me. Instead, she was standing beside him. Ryan looked at me from across the aisle, and there was no panic in his face, no shame, no regret. He simply looked tired, like telling the truth was an inconvenience he could no longer avoid. Then he said the sentence that destroyed my life in front of 200 people. "Emma, I'm sorry. I can't marry you. I'm in love with Madison." The entire church went silent. My mother gasped. My father stood up. Someone in the back whispered, "Oh my God." I looked at Madison, waiting for her to laugh and say this was some horrible joke. But she didn't. She squeezed Ryan's hand and looked down, pretending to be ashamed, though I could see relief on her face. My best friend of 15 years had not only betrayed me. She had walked into my wedding holding the hand of the man I was supposed to marry. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't cry. I just stood there as Ryan said he never meant to hurt me, which was the cruelest sentence of all because people always say that after they have already done the most damage. Then they turned around and walked out together. 200 guests watched them leave. Nobody knew what to do. The pastor closed his Bible. My bouquet slipped from my hand and fell to the floor. That was the last sound I remember clearly from that day. My name is Emma Lawson, and this is the story of how my fiancé left me at the altar for my best friend, and how 3 years later, they walked into my office asking for jobs without realizing I was the CEO sitting on the other side of the interview table. Ryan and I had been together for 4 years. We met at a marketing conference in Chicago, where I was working as a junior brand strategist and he was presenting for a small tech startup. He was charming in that effortless way that makes everyone feel like they are the only person in the room. He remembered names, made people laugh, and always knew exactly what to say. When he asked me out, I felt lucky. I was 27, ambitious, and still trying to prove myself in a city where everyone seemed louder, richer, and more confident than me. Ryan made me feel chosen. That was powerful because for most of my life, I had felt like the reliable one, not the exciting one. Madison, my best friend, had always been the exciting one. We met in middle school when she moved into the house across the street from mine. She was bold, funny, fearless, and beautiful in a way that made strangers look twice. I was quieter, more careful, more practical. Madison pushed me into school dances, road trips, late-night adventures, and conversations I would have been too shy to start alone. For years, I thought we balanced each other. She called me her sister. I believed her. When I introduced Madison to Ryan, I didn't notice anything strange. She hugged him, teased me about finally finding someone handsome, and told him he had better treat me right. Ryan laughed and said he already knew I was too good for him. They seemed friendly. Maybe too friendly, but I trusted them both so completely that jealousy never even entered my mind. That is the dangerous thing about betrayal. It often grows in the rooms where trust has left the door unlocked. Over time, Madison became part of our relationship. She came to dinners. She joined weekend trips. She helped Ryan plan my surprise birthday party. When I worked late, she sometimes met him for coffee to discuss ideas for gifts or events. I thought it was sweet. I thought they were making effort because they loved me. Looking back, the signs were everywhere. Ryan started laughing at his phone and turning the screen away. Madison suddenly knew things I had only told him. They developed inside jokes. When I entered a room, conversations sometimes stopped. But whenever I questioned anything, Madison rolled her eyes and said, "Emma, don't be dramatic. He's basically my brother now." Ryan would kiss my forehead and tell me I was overthinking because of work stress. I believed them because believing them was easier than imagining the truth. The proposal happened on a rooftop restaurant overlooking the city. Madison helped plan it. She chose my dress, booked the photographer, and told me she cried when Ryan showed her the ring. At the time, I thought those were tears of happiness for me. Now I wonder if she cried because part of her knew she wanted what I had. Wedding planning became intense. I was working long hours at a marketing agency while Ryan was trying to grow his startup. Madison practically became our planner. She came to every dress appointment, every venue meeting, every cake tasting. She made herself indispensable. My mother loved her. Ryan's family loved her. Everyone said I was lucky to have such a devoted friend. Nobody realized she was slowly stepping into my place. The week before the wedding, Ryan became distant. He said he was nervous. Madison also acted strange. She cried during my bridal shower and hugged me longer than usual. I thought she was emotional because we were entering a new chapter of life. I had no idea she was saying goodbye to the version of our friendship where I still believed she loved me. After Ryan and Madison left the church, everything became a blur. My father wanted to chase them. My mother held me so tightly I could barely breathe. Guests quietly left, carrying gossip disguised as sympathy. My wedding photographer asked if I wanted the photos deleted. I remember laughing because the question felt absurd. Delete them. How do you delete the sound of 200 people watching your heart break? How do you delete your best friend standing beside your fiancé in the doorway of your own wedding? That night, I sat on the floor of my childhood bedroom still wearing my wedding dress. My mother knocked on the door several times, but I couldn't answer. My phone kept buzzing. Messages from relatives. Messages from co-workers. Messages from people I barely knew. Some said they were sorry. Some asked what happened. Some pretended to care but clearly wanted details. Ryan texted me once. I never wanted it to happen this way. I stared at those words for a long time. Then I blocked him. Madison sent a longer message. She said love was complicated. She said they had tried to fight their feelings. She said she hoped one day I would understand. Understand. That word made me feel sick. I deleted the message without replying. The next morning, the story was already everywhere. Someone had posted a video from the church. It spread through local social media first, then wedding gossip pages, then blogs. Groom leaves bride at altar for maid of honor. My face was in thumbnails. My pain became entertainment. Ryan and Madison disappeared for 2 weeks. Later, I learned they had gone to Florida, calling it a mental health break. I stayed inside, ashamed of something I had not done. That is what betrayal does. It convinces the victim to hide while the guilty rewrite the story. Ryan told people we had been unhappy for a long time. Madison told people she never meant to fall in love. Some mutual friend said I should try to be mature. I learned quickly that people love forgiveness when they are not the ones bleeding. 3 weeks after the wedding, I returned to work. Everyone tried to act normal. They failed. People lowered their voices when I entered rooms. My boss told me to take more time if I needed it. I said I was fine. I was not fine. I was humiliated, angry, and completely empty. But there was one thing I still had. Work. Work did not ask me how I felt. Work did not pity me. Work gave me problems I could solve. So I solved them. Then I solved more. I started arriving before everyone and leaving after everyone. I stopped going out. I stopped dating. I stopped answering calls from people who only wanted updates. My world became strategy decks, client pitches, campaign analytics, and late-night coffee. Pain became fuel, and fuel became discipline. 6 months after the wedding, Ryan and Madison got engaged. I found out because someone sent me a screenshot with the message, "Did you see this?" They looked happy in the photo. She wore a ring. He kissed her forehead the same way he used to kiss mine. For 10 minutes, I couldn't move. Then I did something unexpected. I opened my laptop and finished a client proposal that won my company its biggest account of the year. That was the night something inside me shifted. I realized I had 2 choices. I could let them become the story of my life, or I could make them a chapter nobody remembered by the time they saw what I became. I chose the second. Within a year, I was promoted to senior strategist. Then director. Then vice president. But the higher I rose, the more I saw how broken the agency was. Good ideas were ignored. Creative people were overworked. Clients wanted honest strategy, not recycled buzzwords. I started writing down ideas for my own company. At first, it was just a notebook. Then it became a business plan. Then it became meetings with investors. Everyone told me starting a company was risky. They said I should stay safe. But safe had already humiliated me in a wedding dress. I wasn't afraid of risk anymore. I was afraid of staying small. 2 years after the worst day of my life, I resigned. I used my savings, took a loan, hired 3 people, and opened Lawson Creative Group in a rented office with bad lighting and second-hand chairs. The first months were brutal. Some nights I slept on the office sofa. I lost clients. I made mistakes. I cried in the bathroom and then returned to meetings like nothing happened. But slowly, we grew. We built honest campaigns that actually worked. Small clients became bigger clients. Bigger clients brought referrals. My team expanded. We moved into a better office. Then another. By the 3rd year, Lawson Creative Group was one of the fastest-growing boutique marketing firms in Chicago. Business magazines started calling me a rising founder. Podcast hosts invited me to speak. People who once pitied me now asked for advice. I didn't build the company for revenge, but I won't lie. Every success tasted a little sweeter because of what I had survived. Then one Monday morning, my assistant placed 2 resumes on my desk and said the final candidates for our senior sales position had arrived early. I barely looked at the names at first. I was reviewing a client contract. Then my eyes moved to the top of the first resume. Ryan Mitchell. My hand froze. I picked up the second resume. Madison Reed. For a moment, the office disappeared. 3 years. 3 years since the church. 3 years since the video. 3 years since they walked out of my life holding hands. And now they were sitting in my lobby, applying for jobs at my company. My assistant asked if I was okay. I looked through the glass wall toward the reception area. Ryan sat in a cheap grey suit, older, thinner, nervous. Madison sat beside him, still beautiful, but tired in a way expensive makeup couldn't hide. They had no idea I owned the company. They had no idea the interview was with me. For the first time in 3 years, I smiled. Not because I wanted revenge. Because life had brought them to my door, and this time, I was not the woman standing helpless at the altar. This time, I was the one behind the desk. For almost a full minute, I just stared through the glass wall of my office. Ryan was sitting in the reception area looking at his phone, while Madison nervously flipped through a folder filled with resumes and certificates. 3 years ago, they had walked out of my wedding together believing they were beginning the perfect life. Now they were sitting in my lobby hoping someone would give them a job. Life has a strange sense of timing. My assistant walked into my office and asked if she should bring in the first candidate. I smiled. Not yet. Instead, I asked her to tell them there would be a slight delay. I needed a few minutes. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I wanted to be certain my emotions wouldn't control my decisions. I walked over to the large window overlooking downtown Chicago. 3 years earlier, I couldn't even leave my apartment without people recognizing me from that viral wedding video. Now I owned one of the fastest-growing marketing agencies in the city. We had more than 100 employees. Fortune 500 clients. Offices in 3 states. Everything around me existed because the worst day of my life forced me to rebuild from nothing. My assistant interrupted my thoughts. They're ready whenever you are. I nodded. Send in Ryan first. The office door opened. Ryan walked inside carrying a leather portfolio. He looked older than I remembered. The confidence that once made everyone admire him had disappeared. There were dark circles under his eyes. His expensive suits had been replaced by one that was clearly several years old. He smiled politely without looking up. Then he finally raised his head. The color disappeared from his face. For several seconds. He couldn't speak. He simply stared at me. His mouth slowly opened. Emma. I remained calm. Good morning, Mr. Mitchell. He looked completely frozen. I didn't know. I smiled professionally. Please have a seat. He sat down carefully, still staring at me as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. For almost 30 seconds. Neither of us spoke. Finally he laughed nervously. I guess you've been doing well. I've been busy. He nodded. Then looked around my office. Awards covered one wall. Business magazine covers displayed framed interviews. Photographs with major clients hung beside them. He quietly whispered, "You built all of this." I did. He lowered his eyes. Then he said something I wasn't expecting. "I'm proud of you." 3 years ago, those words would have meant everything. Today, they meant nothing. I opened his resume. "I see you've worked for 4 companies in the last 2 years. He sighed. "Things didn't work out." "Why?" He hesitated. Then admitted each company had downsized or closed. One startup failed. Another lost funding. The third merged with a competitor. Life hadn't been kind to him. I asked about Madison. His expression changed immediately. He looked uncomfortable. Finally he admitted they were no longer together. I wasn't surprised. Still, I asked why. He looked out the window. Then quietly said, "We weren't who we thought we were." I didn't respond. He continued. He admitted that once the excitement disappeared, so did the relationship. Without secrecy. Without betrayal. Without stolen moments. There wasn't much left. He looked back at me. I made the biggest mistake of my life. Again. 3 years earlier. Those words might have broken me. Now, they simply sounded like facts. The interview continued professionally. I asked about his sales experience, leadership, client relationships. He answered every question honestly. When we finished, he stood up, then paused near the door. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know. I'm sorry." I nodded politely. "Thank you for coming today." He smiled sadly, then left. A minute later, my assistant brought Madison inside. She looked far more nervous. The moment she saw me, she started crying. She didn't even make it to the chair. "I'm so sorry." Those were the first words out of her mouth. I remained silent. She wiped her tears. "I've wanted to apologize for years." I calmly asked her to sit down. She did. For several seconds. She couldn't stop crying. Finally she looked at me. "You probably hate me." I answered honestly. "I used to." She lowered her head. Then she told me everything. After they left the wedding, nothing happened the way she imagined. Ryan wasn't the perfect man she thought he was. The guilt destroyed their relationship. His family blamed her. Her family stopped speaking to her. Friends disappeared. The viral wedding video followed them everywhere. She couldn't keep a job because people recognized her. Employers searched her name online. Then quietly stopped calling. Eventually, they moved to another city hoping to start over. It didn't work. The internet never forgets. She looked around my office. Then smiled through tears. "I always knew you'd do something amazing." I almost laughed. 3 years ago, she didn't believe in me enough to choose friendship over my fiancé. Now she admired the life I built after they destroyed mine. She opened her folder. Then slowly removed something. An old photograph. It showed the 2 of us when we were 16. Standing outside our high school. Laughing. Arms around each other. She pushed it toward me. "I kept this." I stared at it. For a moment. I remembered who we used to be. Not rivals. Not enemies. Just 2 teenage girls who believed they'd grow old as best friends. She quietly asked one question. "Do you think, someday, we could ever be friends again?" I looked at the photograph. Then at her. Finally I answered. "No." She nodded slowly. "I understand." There wasn't anger in her face anymore. Only regret. The interview ended. She thanked me for listening. Then walked toward the door. Before leaving, she turned around. I hope your wedding someday is everything mine should have let yours be. Then she quietly walked away. After both interviews ended, my executive hiring committee entered my office. One manager immediately asked, "Should we reject both applications?" Everyone assumed I would. I looked at the 2 resumes sitting on my desk. Then I surprised them. I said, "No." The room became silent. I explained something my grandmother once taught me. She said leadership isn't measured by how you treat people who were kind to you. It's measured by how fairly you treat people who weren't. I wasn't going to punish them because of my past. After the interviews ended, I thought that chapter of my life was finally over. Ryan left the building quietly, and Madison accepted the position with a professionalism I hadn't expected. I believed I would never have to think about my old life again. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, Madison started working at Lawson Creative Group. On her first day, I called the entire team into the conference room. I introduced her exactly the same way I introduced every new employee. No special treatment. No humiliation. No mention of our history. When the meeting ended, she stayed behind. She looked nervous. Then she quietly said, "Thank you for giving me a chance I probably didn't deserve." I simply nodded. This isn't a second chance at friendship. It's a first chance at professionalism. She smiled sadly. I understand. Over the next few months, something unexpected happened. Madison worked harder than anyone on the team. She arrived early. She stayed late. She never complained. She never used our past to gain sympathy. For the first time in her life, she earned something entirely on her own. Meanwhile, Ryan disappeared. I assumed he had found another job. Then one rainy Tuesday afternoon, my assistant told me someone wanted to see me. No appointment. No name. Just someone waiting downstairs. I walked into the lobby. Ryan stood there holding a small cardboard box. He looked thinner than ever. His shoulders were slumped. The confidence he once carried was completely gone. When he saw me, he smiled weakly. "I won't take much of your time." I crossed my arms. "What do you need?" He looked down at the box, then handed it to me. Inside were dozens of photographs, ticket stubs, birthday cards, letters, the necklace I had given him on our 2nd anniversary, even the handwritten wedding vows I had spent months writing before our ceremony. I stared at everything in silence. "I found them while packing," he said. "I realized they belonged to you." I slowly picked up the wedding vows. The paper was still folded exactly the way I remembered. I had written promises. Promises about growing old together, traveling the world, building a family. None of them ever happened. Ryan quietly spoke again. "I kept these because I couldn't forgive myself." I looked at him. "You don't need my forgiveness. You need your own." He nodded. Then he surprised me. He smiled. A real smile. "I think you're right." For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, he looked around the lobby. "You built something incredible." I smiled politely. "So did you." He looked confused. "What?" "You taught me exactly what I never wanted to settle for again." For the first time, he laughed. Not because something was funny. Because he finally understood. He thanked me, then quietly walked away. That was the last time I ever saw Ryan. Months passed. The company continued growing. We opened another office in Seattle, then one in Dallas. Business magazines started calling Lawson Creative one of the fastest growing agencies in America. One evening, I received an invitation to speak at a national leadership conference. More than 5,000 entrepreneurs attended. As I walked onto the stage, the audience applauded. I looked across the crowd, then noticed someone sitting in the back. Madison. She wasn't there as my employee. She had purchased her own ticket. After my speech ended, she waited until everyone else had left. Then she walked over. "I wanted to hear your story." I smiled. "You already know it." She shook her head. "No. I only knew the version where I was the villain. I never understood the version where you became the hero. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she asked something. Do you ever wish that wedding had happened? I looked out across the empty auditorium, then smiled. No. She looked surprised. I continued. If Ryan had married me, I would have built my entire future around someone who never truly chose me. And I never would have built this company. I never would have discovered who I could become. Madison wiped away a tear. I stole the life I thought you wanted. I looked at her, then quietly answered. You didn't steal my future. You only delayed me from finding it. She smiled, then hugged me. It wasn't the hug of best friends. It was the hug of two people finally letting go of years of pain. As she walked away, I realized something. Forgiveness doesn't always rebuild relationships. Sometimes, it simply sets you free. 1 year later, Lawson Creative celebrated its 5th anniversary. More than 300 employees gathered in our headquarters. During my speech, I looked around the room. Every person there had taken a chance on a company that started with one broken woman sitting alone in a tiny rented office. I raised my glass, then said, 5 years ago, I thought my life ended at the altar. Everyone laughed softly. It turns out, it was only the beginning. The room erupted into applause. That evening, I drove home alone. The same city looked completely different. The places that once reminded me of heartbreak now reminded me of survival. As I walked into my apartment, there was a small package waiting outside my door. No return address. Inside was a wedding invitation. Ryan was getting married. Not to Madison. To someone else. Attached to the invitation was a handwritten note. It read, "Thank you for teaching me that love built on betrayal never lasts. I hope this time I become the man I should have been years ago." I smiled. Not through friends. Not on a dating app. I met him while volunteering at a charity event for young entrepreneurs. He didn't know about the viral wedding. He didn't know about Ryan. He didn't know about Madison. He only knew the woman standing in front of him. And somehow, that felt perfect. One evening, while watching the sunset from my balcony, he asked me a simple question. Do you believe everything happens for a reason? I smiled, then looked toward the city skyline. I don't know. But I do know this. Sometimes the worst day of your life introduces you to the best version of yourself. 3 years earlier, I thought I had lost everything. In reality, I had only lost the people who were never meant to walk beside me. Ryan and Madison believed they destroyed my future. Instead, they unknowingly built it. Because success isn't proving people wrong. It's becoming someone so happy that proving them wrong no longer matters.